not on the Warwick SU page. That's because it's actually 3 societies. So we've got a computing society, AI, and coding. And these are the people. So my name's Alia, I'm third year CSE. Edmund, who is no longer with us because he had other things to do, is third year CS. He's also computing. Warwick AI, we've got Alistair at the back, who's third year DM. Is Laura here? Nope, Laura's not here either. Piotr isn't here, but Alfie's also at the back. Yeah, so quick shills. So Computing Society, we are like the primary academic society for computing. We do a bunch of like academic events, social, gaming, and then there's also inclusivity. So if you are, so for like the underrepresented groups in computer science, we host specific events for them, such as like barbecues, which often end up being pizza lunches because of the weather. So you want to say anything about AI?
Yeah, AI Society is a student society at Warwick. Obviously, we do a lot of stuff to do with AI, so we do various things here. AI safety, research, education, projects, talks. Essentially, if you want to get more involved in the field of artificial intelligence, if you want to explore the technologies that exist, you don't need to have any necessary experience already. We'll give you all of that as you come along. This is a great way to get involved. Code nights, which are going to be the main kind of meeting every week, are going to be Tuesdays, 6 till 9 p.m., usually in the FAB FAB 2.43. But if you join our Discord server, you'll be able to find everything about there. So yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alfie from Coding Society. So what we are is we're kind of a society that has everything and anything to do with coding or software engineering, whether that be careers, internships, graduate roles, or kind of learning to code. So we cater to a lot of people from a lot of different subjects, not just computing, so like maths or IB, kind of like business school subjects. We mainly run mentorship nights, so we have these once a week for an hour, 2 hour, where we can pair you up with someone who can teach you what you want to learn. You just fill out a quick form, and we can kind of match you with someone who can teach you what you want to learn. As well as courses like this, we will run them throughout the year, as well as career workshops and more stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, so this is the course overview. So this week we'll be doing a very basic introduction to variables, data types, and exceptions. Next week we'll be looking at flow control and functions. So that's if-else statements that you might have seen before, and that'll be presented by coding. Then they'll also be following up with lists and loops. Week 4 we'll be looking at file handling. That'll be presented by AI. Back to us again for objects, libraries, and readability. That'll be the other Edmund. And then we noticed last year a lot of people taking this course are often in degrees where it might be helpful if you guys knew how to do data processing. So that's new to week 6. So AI will be taking that. Everyone can code. That's something someone you know has probably said. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. You'll have a lot of functions. Realistically, this course is 12 hours long. We're not going to be able to teach you everything that you'll ever need to know, but what we're hoping to do is give you a decent enough background that when you inevitably end up on Stack Overflow for an assignment, you won't be too confused by what you're reading. With that in mind, let's get into week 1's content. So yeah, as I said, this is going to be variables, data types, and exceptions. By the end of today, this is what you're going to learn. So a few basic operations like adding, subtracting, what variables are, these 3 data types, which are those 2 are numeric, that one's just text, how to use some basic inbuilt functions, how to change between data types, and yeah, exceptions and a bit of basic debugging. So you should be able to make basic Python scripts. So at the most fundamental level, programs do things to data. What things can we do? And in what order do these things happen? And what can our program ultimately produce? Well, that's really up to you. In terms of data, what types of data? Python supports quite a few data types. We'll learn how it's represented and how we can access it. So variables. So you might recognize something like this from like year 8 maths. X has a name, X has a value. Does anyone know what it is in this case?
69.
Nice. It's literally the same thing in Python. Hello has a name, hello has a value, it's 38. Importantly, equals here means is assigned. So we're saying this line technically translates to hello has the value 38. It does not mean that we're saying hello is the same thing as 38. And yeah, this is what we call an integer data type. So it's just a whole number. Variable names. These are example variable names. Important rules. They cannot contain spaces. They cannot start with numbers. And technically, according to the style guide, we should represent spaces with underscores. However, you won't get an error if you named something like favorite number with a capital letter. This is actually, as an aside, is called camel case, where you basically write the first word in all lowercase and then any preceding words are capitalized. How do we get things to be displayed? We use the print function, which is just print. So this would output 7. This would output 6. These things in brackets, these are known as arguments. It's just data that our function's using. Python programs are evaluated from top to bottom. So you start with mynum equals 4 and you end with print mynum. So in this case, the output would be 7 and then on a new line 4. The print function also has a 2-argument version. So like that. In this case, this would print 13 and then -9 on the same line. And yeah, we separate multiple arguments in a function with a comma. Python lets us change the values of variables. So for example, here, at the first print function, cool number and epic number will have 8 and then -16. But when we print it again, it will be -512 and then 1024. As basic variables, so let's see what we can do with them. These are all of the operations that you can do on an well, it's most of them on an integer. So we can add, subtract, multiply, divide, which would return a float, which we'll see in a second, but that's basically just a decimal number. Double slash is dividing two numbers, returning only the integer part. So this is always an integer. And then percent is, it returns the remainder of the division. So for example, if you did 7% 5, it would return 2. These are floats. So yeah, as you can see, the first two return decimal numbers. The second two return integers. And yeah, in Python, if you want to write comments to basically say what your program is doing, you do this using a hashtag. You have to do this hashtag at the start of every line, otherwise Python's going to think you're writing code. Some of you might be wondering why that's not a for. The answer is that there's like a long answer that I'm happy to explain, but for simplicity, let's just go floating numbers are weird in binary. But yeah, if you want to know the full answer, come see me at the workshop. So here, as you can see, the result of this addition would be 8.0, which should just be 8, but Python's not smart enough to know that we automatically want to cast it, so it will just keep it as 8.0. Precedence is a thing, so I'm sure if you know either BIDMAS, BODMAS, or PEDMAS. So yeah, so with the brackets, 4 plus bars is evaluated first, and then the division. Without it, we would do 50, divide by 4, keep the integer part, and then add bars. So yeah, brackets, indices, division and multiplication happen left to right, addition and subtraction also happen left to right. So yeah, in this case, biz is 2. A little shorthand. So as you can see in this one, we're just incrementing a by whatever b is, and then we're also just multiplying the new a by whatever b is. So yeah, this prints out 10. The equivalent is these operators here, and these will work with both subtraction division and I believe integer division as well. So yeah, you can just rewrite it. It saves you writing the variable name again, and it produces the same output. Yeah, so we do have a lab sheet for you later. The first few tasks will cover the concepts that we've gone through right now. Exceptions. How many of you have seen this? My laptop did it 10 minutes before the session started. Inevitably, you're going to have problems with your code. It happens to the best of us. So there are 3 different classes. So syntax is you've basically violated the structural rules of the language. So maybe you declared a variable name and had a space in it. Runtime, the structure's fine, but your script attempts to do something prohibited when it's executing. Maybe you accidentally divide by 0. And logic is the script will run fine, doesn't do anything illegal, but it doesn't do what you want it to do. Okay. Python can only help you with the first 2. Debugging helps you with the 3rd one. So this might be an exception that you've seen that you will see. Here we've got a name error because Z is not defined. So yeah, and that's because we've never actually said what Z is, but then we're trying to add it to Y. Task 4 and 5 in the sheets will cover this. Strings. It's the final data type that we said we were going to cover today. A note on spacing. Spacing's fine. Just don't do it at the beginning of the line, because that's how we show indentation. But yeah, any of these 3, even that last one, is completely fine. It's up to you. Strings are strung together. They are essentially, we have like a base type, which is the character, which is a single letter, and then we just add multiple characters together. They're strung together, aka strings. We can represent it using either single quote marks, like the top one, or double quote marks, like the second one. Worth noting, if your string has apostrophes in it, aka these single quote marks, you'll either need to escape the character, which means you need to use a backslash before it, or you can just surround the string in double quotes to shortcut that. The same is true if you've got quote marks and you're trying to use, if you've got quote marks in your string. So yeah, both of these are valid. And yeah. Addition works well. Addition works on strings, except it's not as you might expect. It just joins them together, importantly with no space in between. So if you want spaces between the strings, you'll have to manually add it. Does the bottom one work? No, Python doesn't know how to join a string and an integer together. The same would be true if we tried to use a float in place of the integer. And yeah, task 6 to 9 will cover these concepts. Casting. So we have 3 casts, str, in, and float. No prizes for guessing what each of these cast to. As an example, so casts are used to convert to that type. So int var changes var to an integer. Float var will change it to a float, and then we change it back to a string. So yeah, in this case, the first value is a string -3. We then have 1, then it's 0.5, and then 0.5 as a string with no errors. So there are a few subtleties when you convert. So these always work. These can fail. So for example, if you try to convert the letter A to an integer, Python doesn't know how to do that. Same with a float. Now, we're just going to talk quickly about integer and float. So, int 42, that's fine, that'll convert. Int 24, that's fine, that'll convert. You can't convert 6 spelled out. Same again, 4.2, 9 won't work. And also integer 4.2 won't work because of that little decimal point there. But yeah, back to integer and float. We say that integers can be widened to a float. Yeah, basically here, when you add these two together, it doesn't break, but the result will be a float, and but whole will still remain an integer. Yeah, so when you print that out, you'll get 11.2 and 7. But when we convert from a float to an integer, we can lose information. So here, if we print in E, we get 2. So yeah, we have to explicitly cast between float and integer because the goal is not to lose any information. Basically, when we convert from float to integer, Python will take the entire number and just truncate it at the decimal point. It won't round up or down. It will just be whatever was before the decimal point. But when you do go integer to float, that's fine because it's just adding a 0.0 on the end, so no information's lost. And yeah, tasks 11 to 13 should cover these concepts. Okay, so on to getting an input. Actually, do we have any questions at the minute? Nope. Okay. Oh, hello.
The floats. I don't know much about Python. I know a little bit of R. In R, you can set them to double precision sometimes.
Python doesn't have the concept of a double. Everything is just float. So, anything else? Cool. All right, inputs. So this is how you get information from a user. You use the input function, and then you can supply an optional prompt. So for example, asking what your name is, just to help make the person using your program understand what's going on a little bit. So yeah, this function returns a string value. So if, for example, you actually wanted them to input a number, you would have to then convert whatever was input into either an integer or a float. So for example, if I said my name was Bob, the output would be that. Yeah, so like I said, if you want to enter a number, you have to then convert the input, otherwise you won't be dealing with the type you think you're dealing with. So for example, if I add 18, we convert to integer, add 1, and then we'll get the output as 19. And yeah, task 14 should cover this. So, that's been slightly quicker than I anticipated, but it's fine. This is what we covered. So yeah, we answered all these questions, so we've learned some of the things we can do. We've learned how Python executes, it's top down. We've learned the sort of things we can output and how we can manipulate and change data. Yeah, we've also covered all of these. So we've learned some operations, how to define variables, and what the different data types are. We've also introduced briefly exceptions and debugging. Don't worry if you didn't understand it entirely. You'll get used to it as you get some more error messages. We've shown how to change between a few different data types. And yeah, how to use some basic Python functions like print and input. So you should be able to make basic Python scripts.